Our next presentation is from Laurence Shallo, who you all know from Teagasc Moor Park, and we'll go through, and there's a number of questions in terms of that excretion factor, in particular on dairy systems. So Laurence might go through that with us and the basis for the emissions factors that associate with the various dairying production systems. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. And I suppose just to start off, this is a piece of work that we have done over the last probably 4 or 5 months based on a request from DAFM, and it's really around nitrogen management strategies within grass-based systems. And just to acknowledge that there's a number of people have been working on this, in particular LD Roel, who is a modeler, some of you might know from the MOST grass growth model. So I suppose just to outline what we were asked to look at, and just to give some context, we were looking at I suppose changing when fertilizer was applied, as well as the level of fertilizers that were applied. So from reductions of 10 to 20% of chemical nitrogen, and also looking at where excessive uses of chemical nitrogen were used. In essence, where 300 and 350 kilos of chemical nitrogen were being used, what was the impact on leaching? The other thing that we were asked to do was look at non-compliant slurry spreading over the closed period, so where there was 12 or 25% of the slurry spread in December. We were also asked to look at, I suppose, stocking rate and what a reduction in stocking rate might look like, but also looking at what high stocking rates on the milking platform, what impact they have on nitrates loss. Organic N, then how that has changed over time, and obviously organic N increased to 89 this year, but in reality that hadn't been looked at probably since it was introduced, since that 85 was introduced, and it was actually so long ago no one could figure out where the 85 came from. So that was part of our work, and I suppose finally then, and this came from a request from the Commission to look at what a banding system might look like for Ireland. So just to acknowledge, there was a number of models we used. The MOST model, which is the grass growth model, the MDSM, which is a Moor Park Dairy Systems model, and we used an Johnstone Castle model, the Aaron model as well. So there's a number of models used in this process. So I suppose this slide basically is probably the most interesting of the whole lot from all our work. And what it looks at is nitrate leaching per hectare to 1 meter level. So this doesn't show you what happens in the groundwater, but it just shows you what the loss is to 1 meter level. I wouldn't get overly panicked about the absolute numbers here, but just to show the variation from year to year. Essentially what we can see here, with management being the exact same over those that period of time from 2004 up to 2020, we saw a range from a low in 2010 of, we'll say, 37, 38, 39 kilos of nitrogen loss to 1 meter, compared to 2009, where there was 89 kilos of nitrogen lost to 1 meter. So the major story from this is the impact of weather and management on nitrate loss. So the range here was from 39 kilos to 88. So no matter, irrespective of management, irrespective of change, the big thing here is management, is weather and its impact on nitrogen loss, its impact on grass growth. And I suppose, pointing out 2018 was one of the higher years, and obviously we, when you think about it from a grass growth point of view, from a climate point of view in the autumn, and that probably also feeds into 2019 where there was significant losses. But interestingly, if we look at 18, 19 and 20, we're looking at decreasing losses from the model, again, just based on weather. So then I suppose if we start looking at the impact of N fertiliser, and just to make the point again, the absolute number is not really important, just to look at the relative effect of a reduction in 25 kilos. So going from 250 kilos of nitrogen to 225, reduced loss from 61.9 down to 60.5, so about 1.4 kilos or 2.3%. And the exact same number then if we drop to 200, another 1.4 kilos. So, reducing chemical nitrogen is reducing loss, but probably we would have expected when we were starting to look at it originally that reduction in loss would have been higher. And the opposite is also true. Increasing chemical nitrogen to 300 and 350 kilograms of nitrogen had a significant impact on loss. So these farms that I suppose that are operating at higher chemical nitrogen levels are having significantly higher loss levels. Again, very interestingly, if we look at year-to-year variation, what you can see here, and again, this is based on LD's modeling, what we can see here is that, you know, in a year like 2011, the year is not, you know, the impact of chemical nitrogen is relatively small compared to a year like 2018, where higher chemical nitrogen resulted in much higher losses. So again, huge year-to-year variation. If we look at slurry over the close period, and again, what we're seeing here is when we looked at the spreading of 12% of your slurry in that month of December, the loss here is about 4.3 kilograms or 5%. And a similar figure if 25% of the slurry is spread across 25% of the farm. So for those paddocks that get to slurry, there is significant losses when slurry is spread over that winter period. Again, significant year-to-year variations from a year like 2005, which really said that it didn't matter really that much, compared to a year like 2015, where there was significant increased losses with spreading slurry in that December period. If we then look at stocking rate and look at the effect on leaching, an interesting one here is, and you're probably asking yourself, 268 kilograms of organic N, what are they doing? Why did they look at that? Essentially what we did here was we assumed that the 91 kilograms of organic N, the average number of a dairy cow today, is what the figure is here, operated at 2.95 livestock units per hectare. Basically, what that basically means is that if we pull back to the 2.75, which is what essentially would mean dropping, including that 91, there would be saving. So that saving is essentially saving that's on the ground already. So because we're up on the organic N level, there is a saving in terms of loss to the tune there of 1.3 kilograms of organic N, or nitrate loss. If you reduce stocking rate further down to 230, you can see here that the potential loss saved is 1.7 kilograms. Then if we look at the milking platform and looked at high stocking rates, 340 kilograms of organic N or 3.7 livestock units per hectare versus 4.6, you can see the leaching goes up pretty dramatically. So it goes up from 61.9 up to 67.6 or 9% increase versus 73.7 or 19% increase. So essentially, increase in stocking rate on the platform is having a significant increased loss on that area ground. Interestingly though, if you look at the full farm and look at the farm where slurry is going back out to the out block, basically what we can see here is over across the whole farm, the relative increase in nitrate loss is relatively small. I suppose one case here is if the slurry is not going out to the out block, or if the out block is in a different catchment, obviously it doesn't get the benefit of a reduced intensity on that silage platform. I suppose the most important lesson for us out of all this was the need for precision management, and the need for precision management in a year like, in particular, with 2018. So if we just look at 2018 and we look at the numbers in terms of chemical nitrogen levels, in terms of stocking rate, every move we made in the year like 2018 had an impact on loss. So it ranged from 200 stocking rate of 230 kilograms of organic N with 200 kilograms of nitrogen down here, up to a stocking rate of 268 kilograms of organic N and 350 kilograms of nitrogen. There was a 20 kilo increase in nitrate loss. Compare that to 2011, when in effect it didn't really matter at all what we did. Irrespective of stocking rate or chemical nitrogen, there was very little increase. So really what this tells us is we need to, I suppose, be more precise, and in particular as we head into more extreme weather events, on how we manage our swards. I suppose on a positive, what it does tell us is that we can reduce loss by being more, by, I suppose, tailoring back chemical nitrogen when we're in droughts and things like that, in those type of years that we're, I suppose, going to become more used to as we go forward. So that was the first part, and that was looking at the losses. I suppose the next thing then is the organic N, and what we looked at that is how that has changed over time, and that's where we start. And essentially what we've done is we've modeled organic N change between 2012 and 2019. I suppose just a couple of points. Organic N is calculated essentially based on total nitrogen into the animal, total nitrogen out of the animal, we take off the gaseous losses, and what's left is organic N. So if we look at the period 2012, our organic N was 88, 2013 89, and so on. As we go on, 2018 and 19, you can see there it's creeping up to 91 in 2017, 94 in 18, and 94 in 19. So I suppose the question is, where do we get the 89 that's operated at today? Essentially, that 89 is the average between 13 and 17. Then if we were to move to, if we were, I suppose, go with one number for Ireland, and we were to use the previous 5 years, we'd be moving to a figure of 91 in 2022. And I suppose the other point here is that what we're seeing here is that the organic N is changing or increasing by roughly 0.6, 0.7 per year. So every 4 years, we can expect the organic N to increase by 3 kilos. So if it's 91 in 2022, in 2026 it'd be 94, in 2030 it'd be 97, and so on, as it increases over time, unless that rate of increase maybe either increases or decreases as we move forward. So that organic N, if we stay with one number, would increase over time. Just some sensitivity, just to give you an idea of a high producing cow producing 7,500 kilos, or about, I think the figure here was 600 kilos of milk solids, being fed about 1.5 tons of concentrate. That cow has an organic N output of 114. And obviously, if there's a higher milk yield cow, she'll have a higher organic N output. So the final part then is to look at a banding system and look at how that might work. And I suppose just to look at, you know, just to give you an example, this is just a French one, a French banding system. And, you know, maybe the French aren't known for making things simple, but this one has 9 bands, and actually it's been updated since. So now there's 12 bands in the French one. And if we look at the Dutch one, they operate a 5-band system. The UK, up to the point of leaving, we're operating a 3-band system. So I suppose when we were asked to look at this, what we wanted to do was develop a system that is simple to operate, but it reflects nitrogen output related to animal milk yield. So that was it. We wanted it simple. We wanted people to understand it. We wanted it not to, you know, lots of jumping around. We wanted, I suppose, farmers to be able to clearly see where they are and where the system is as they go forward. So after a lot of kind of debate and looking at it, we come up with a 3-band system. Now we've looked at 5, 6, 7-band systems as well. And, you know, maybe some of that will come up in the questions, but we ended up looking at a 3-band system, less than 4,500 kilos, between 4.5 and 6.5, and greater than 6,500 kilos. And I suppose based on data that we got from ICBF and from the National Farm Survey, then we were able to look at how many farmers were in each of those bands, how much milk was in each of those bands, what the average milk yield was, what the average fat and protein was, and how much concentrate was fed. So if we go with the first band there, there's 24% of the suppliers on average between 2015 and 2019 in that band, 13% of the milk. The average milk yield of that band was 3,700 kilos, 404 fat, 345 protein, and 770 kilograms of concentrate fed. We would have expected, and we, I suppose, thought that the milk solids will be substantially different between bands, and you can see here that they're not. So this is based on the data from actual milk deliveries from ICBF. There is very little difference in terms of milk solids between the bands. Band 2 had 65% suppliers, 70% of the milk, and the average milk yield was 5.4, and they fed about 945 kilograms on average over the 5-year period. The final group, 11% of suppliers, 17% of the milk. Average milk yield is 7.1, 401 fat, 344 protein, and roughly 1.4 tons of concentrate. So that's what, and Bernard mentioned the bands, that's what gives you those bands. So 112 kilograms of nitrogen in, 22 kilograms of nitrogen out, 9% of gaseous losses gives you 80, and so on up along. So that's how the numbers have been generated. And I suppose in principle, if we agree that a higher milk yield cow has a higher organic N output, then we're down to, you know, is lots of bands where there's more extreme hits as milk yield goes up. So for example, if we go with a 5-band system or a 6-band system, you know, maybe your milk yields over 8,000 kilograms are taking a hit. So it's just, you know, where we want to pitch it and how simple or how complicated we want the overall system to operate. So I suppose just to conclude then, Bill, before I hand it back to you, there's large year-to-year variation in leaching. So that's probably the biggest message we got from our study looking at nitrate leaching, much bigger than any management influence. Reducing N surplus has a significant benefit on reducing N leaching. So reducing N surplus is positive from reducing N leaching. Overuse, reducing or eliminating overuse of chemical fertiliser and spreading slurry during the closed periods will have a positive influence in N loss. Organic N is increasing over time, so there's no way of hiding away from that. Organic N, if we stay with a one number system, that organic N is going to increase over time. Potentially when the 85 was introduced, 25, 30 years ago, it might have been too high, but certainly we're gone past that 85 now. And I suppose just in terms of the banding, all that banding is trying to do is create a link between the organic N number and the nitrogen excretion rates, so as that we more accurately reflect the potential loss from the different types of animals. So that's it, Bill.
Okay, thanks, Laurence. Very comprehensive and detailed. There's a good number of questions on the right-hand side, and I'll move to them. So, but thanks to all the speakers.